You know the moment someone asks for something, and before you even checked with yourself, you hear your own voice saying yes. Or maybe it's the one moment plans fall apart. Someone pushes back. A hard truth just lands a little wrong. And heat rises in your chest before you decide to do anything at all. One of you goes quiet, and one of you goes off. And both of you walk away feeling the exact same thing. That wasn't me at my strongest. We treat these like opposites, the peacekeeper and the powder keg. But they're not opposites. They're two people standing on either side of the same missing thing. Power that got misplaced. One of us handed it away to keep the peace. One of us gripped it so tight it turned into control. Today we're talking about stepping into your power. What real power actually is. Why the quiet ones and the reactive ones are running from the same fear. And how to take your power back without turning it on anyone. By the end of this episode, you'll walk away with a knowing of which side of this you're living on, and you'll have a better understanding of what it takes to stop handing your power away or gripping it so tightly and actually start standing in it. My name is Michael Perry, and I'm joined today by Justin Gates.
Hello.
And this is the New Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the New Ashla Podcast. So today we're going over standing in our power, or stepping into our power, maybe better said. We all have this capacity and we all know it. I know, kind of like I brought up in the hook, is, you know, I've had all those rough moments, those heated discussions, those situations that I walk away and I think of 1,000 ways I could have done it better. And I asked myself, like, why couldn't I hit that? I know before this healing process, I'd always beat myself up because it's like, it made no sense to me that I couldn't just be like that when I had those moments. Half the time I'd rehearse them beforehand, thinking I'd just be able to go right into it.
Because like a lot of people, you assume that these two states of being are opposites. And they're not, right? They really appear to be. One shuts down, one explodes. One avoids conflict like the plague. One creates it and thrives on it, right? We know those people. One will say nothing when their boundaries are being crossed or when they're being disrespected, and one will say too much. So they appear to be opposites, these passive and reactive people, but they're not. Because underneath the surface, these two patterns in us, they come from the same place, don't they?
Yeah.
A lost sense of power. And no matter what side of this you're on, Michael, you know when you've lost power or when you feel like you've lost power.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I remember when I started learning more about assertiveness, because I feel like that is the middle ground, right? Mm-hmm. And because I was like, man, this is going to be so much hell. And I felt like it was going to be so much harder for me as a passive person to cultivate this sense of authority, for lack of a better term. And upon looking more into it, I realized it's even harder for the powder keg types because they at least sort of get their way with that. That control works to a degree, at least in falsities, because everyone ends up being at arm's length and surface level. But
well, yeah. Well, here's the other thing about the powder keg people. This is the disadvantage. Once they go too far, you can't backtrack it. Once you explode, you can't unexplode. At least the passive people can add more if they haven't added enough. So yes, we want to try to find this center. And of course, exploding in anger is this is why across any philosophy, any belief system, any teachings, they always advise us to not lose our temper, right? Because once it's gone, it's gone. At least with the passive people, they can kind of add more. But the powder keg guys can't take it out. But real power is not volume, and this is where the powder keggers get it wrong. It's not about volume. It's not about dominance. It's not even about intimidation. It's certainly not about control, which is kind of the crux of this problem we're dealing with in today's episode.
yeah.
But it has nothing to do with your ability to win every single argument or whatever, right? Real power is self-possession. It's that ability to stay connected to yourself no matter what's going on, especially when we're uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. Well, and being able to handle things, and maybe not perfectly, but being able to delegate communication where there is understanding, where there is resolution, where it's no longer about blame, but about solution.
Yeah. But really, at the center of all this is alignment with truth, alignment with what is, not with what we're stressing about or anxious about. And again, this is how we know that these different states come from kind of the same type of wounds, the same hurts, right? That passive person hands over power because it's just easier to just do that, because then you don't have to deal with being judged or deal with being chastised, or there's no follow-up, no bad follow-up from somebody when you just hand everything over, right?
You're not responsible for the consequences.
Exactly.
You feel, at least.
They're going to keep taking
safe.
advantage of you, right? They're going to keep taking advantage of you, but that's how they kept the peace. You learn that staying quiet avoided punishment. It made them feel like they're easier to love, easier to deal with, easier to get along with, right? Notice the words I'm using: deal with, as if somebody has to shrink for them to deal with you, right? As we've talked about in many different times, that's a red flag. It's a good time to get up and go, right? When people treat you that way. But that reactive person, that powder keg, also feels powerless, just like the passive person. But of course, they respond differently, don't they? They grip things as control. They do what? They push harder. They get louder. They become defensive. Which is ironic, because they'll get super defensive, but they'll be the ones to attack you first, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's fascinating to me, because it's like, as I've been moving into this fear, I spent so much time on the passive side that I never understood, and I never saw anything wrong with it. I feel that's kind of the ego for both sides, right? Is when all these coping mechanisms, we perceive them as strengths, right? My aggression, my ability to dominate is actually what makes me so awesome. Or, my ability to be nice and to be liked is my superpower, and the way I can just understand people and accommodate them. But in the end, you said it perfect. It's control is what everyone wants. Control is at the heart of all of this. I remember I used to be so triggered when I would see those YouTube videos pop of, like, the nice guy is actually one of the most manipulative people, or something around those lines. And it'd be like, screw you.
I believe
I'm just trying to be a good person.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no. No, like, as I had to sit in my shadows,
you did
I had
a
to
little bit of that,
reflect
too.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? But it's like, I had to realize, it's like, holy crap, like, my whole nice guy is the only way I know how to get love and validation. And I'm trying so desperately to control the narrative of I am a good person.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting how the same source can create totally different reactions. It could even be the same type of trauma. The two people could be traumatized the same way, yet have these completely different reactions to it. I always found that to be interesting, especially when you're looking at siblings, right? For example, I was always fascinated how siblings, and I only have experience with just a few siblings. I don't know about, large groups of siblings, where there's like 6 or 8 or 10 kids. But I always found it interesting how you got 3 or 4 kids. You could have 2 girls and 2 boys, and how all 4 of them raised the same way, same conditions, same parents.
Yeah.
Ideally, working from the same sorts of traumas, potentially, have 4 completely different reactions to them.
Yeah, I'll be honest, even as a kid, that fascinated. It used to blow my mind how I'd see these families, and I know those kids were going through different things. I now see there's a little bit of difference, because parents treat each kid differently, but on the whole, it's like they went through the same things and came out totally different.
Especially if there's several years in between, right? Because the parents grow. Grow. I'm a much different dad I was a much different dad for my youngest than I was my oldest or my second oldest, right? Because I grew too, right? But still, like the same time. And also, of course, people are born with different needs, whether we are able to see that or not. And obviously we're not, because we screw it up so often as a species, right? But so anyways, one person gives that power a way to stay safe. The other one grabs for control so that they can feel safe, because really they're both coming from the same problems. Different armor, same roots. Both of these really at the end of the day are fear. They're wearing fear as a costume to try and protect themselves.
Well, and I think it's a duality that's happening within this fear, because you have the need for control, which is sort of the projection of what this fear is trying to do. And underneath that, what is really driving is a fear of vulnerability. The good person is afraid for being seen bad, and the aggressor is afraid of being seen and then losing their, how do I phrase this? They're afraid that if they let someone in or someone close, that then they'll know how to take advantage of them, that they'll lose their power. And it's horrifying. And I could be wrong on that. You might know that one better than I do, because I'm still learning. I want to be a student a lot in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't fall on the passive side of things. And very, very early on in my life, especially with I'd say probably my early to mid-teens all the way up to, let's say, my early 20s. Let's go 22, 23 years old. I was the powder keg in a lot of ways. I was very assertive, but I was super assertive. So much so that people gave me nicknames over it, right? So much so that people would keep their distance from me. You know, I was, and there are, we all know people like this in our lives, you know, the self-proclaimed and very proud a-holes, right?
Yeah.
That nobody wants to talk to, nobody wants to be around. And look, you shouldn't change who you are so people will like you. That's obviously against everything we teach here. But, right, it's not good to be a powder keg either. We need to find the middle ground here, because people will walk on eggshells around you. You'll find yourself attracted to people around, building people around you that are super passive so that you can have this false sense of control. But at the end of the day, none of this is what actual power is it?
No. No. I mean, if you think about it, if you were to actually have a powerful conversation like I was talking about earlier, where it comes to being able to come to that middle ground, to really talk things out without getting activated, or at least being able to manage that activation and come up with solution and resolve instead of trying to be right. That is not something either side is qualified for. The more tensions rise, because the more tensions rise, the more those trauma responses activate.
This is one of those perfect topics for psycho-spirituality, right? It really is, because there is a clear and defined psycho angle here, but this is also very much a spiritual thing and problem and solution, right? Yeah. Because when people think about the word power, a lot of them, most of them will immediately think dominance, right? Or controlling others. And they'll say, I have power over myself. No, you do not. If you're reacting to everything like a powder keg, you don't have anything under control. If you are so passive to the point where people just step all over you all the time, you don't have any kind of power either. You're not actually controlling anything. Both these guys are trying to control things. They have none, because power is nothing like dominance. Power is nothing like control. It's something much more grounded, isn't it?
Yeah. It's being able to be authentically yourself. And by authentically yourself, some people will identify as one or the other. But
Which
being able to bring your needs up without it being attack. Be able to stand your ground without it being blame. It's, yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say through a spiritual lens is going on here?
Well, if you want real power, then you need to start with self-possession. The person who is truly powerful has no need to dominate anyone, let alone the room. But they also do not abandon themselves to keep the room comfortable, right? As I just said a minute ago. That's the difference. The passive person may confuse peace with this self-abandonment. The reactive person would confuse strength with control. Neither one of these are true. And neither one of these people are truly free. They feel free, but it's false. One is ruled by the fear of upsetting others, right? Would you agree with that? And the other one is ruled by the fear of losing control, which is so ironic, because they do lose control all the time. But they do that in reaction to not wanting to lose control. So real power is when our authentic, as you said it great. Real power is when our authentic self, our greater self, can stay present. It can say, this is what I feel. This is what I need. This is what I will not do, right? Knowing how to say no. This is where I stand. But it does it without collapsing or attacking. That is power. That is power. The axiom, I have an axiom for you here, and I think you'll like this one. True power, axiom of light, true power is the strength to reject it. Now, this axiom is one of our most powerful axioms. It doesn't get a chance to be used very often, does it? But this fits so perfectly well because passivity and reactivity both have no idea what real power is. That's the problem. So neither one of these things are true power. The true power is not surrendering yourself to keep the peace, as I said. True power is not controlling yourself, or it is not controlling others to feel in control or feel safe. True power is self-possession. That's the Ashla way, right?
Yeah.
What do you think of this axiom in regards to our topic today?
It's so true, and even on both sides, because it really seems like it would apply just to the powder kegs, but it also applies to those who are passive, because we know our power is that we can avoid the conflict. Our power is we know we can create resolution without drama, but being able to reject that power to stand in our own authority and our own needs, that is true strength because it's uncomfortable. Same with the powder keg who realizes getting upset right now is not going to actually create real solution. It might tame the moment. I might feel on top during this period, but I'm going to lose connection more. I'm going to lose the ability to actually have resolve or to grow here.
Yeah.
So it's perfect.
Why do we associate this pattern with a personality? We just did a show about finding our true personality. So this show is coming in at a perfect time, right? We just did a show about finding our authentic personality, our authentic self. Why do we take these, Michael, and just associate them with our actual personality when none of that's true?
Well, it comes back to mass, right? I mean, the more we learn to survive in life, because these are nothing but survival skills we've picked up along the way to get our needs met. The passive person learned that I can avoid conflict if I just please everybody. Then I can go through life and survive. And then the aggressor learned if I demand what I want, then my needs will be met.
Right. Is that how this shows up? Is that one way that we can know that this stuff starts showing up when we start identifying with these as personalities?
No, because I believe the authenticity is the death of identity. And when we hold so strongly, because I see it, I used to be one of these people where it's like, this is just who I am. This is just how I work. I'm not going to change this. And I used to be very passionate about that. Same with people I know on the other side of the spectrum, where it's just like, this is who I am. Like it or leave. And it's just like, the more we allow it to become something that is ingrained in our DNA, we don't give ourselves the ability to move from it to a better place, to a stronger self.
Right. How does this stuff show up? How can we start to recognize this?
Well, I'd say for the passive person, it's a lot of different things from, overcommitting, saying yes to everything, over apologizing. That's one I had to, I still have moments where if I don't start catching myself doing it, I'll apologize for things I had nothing to do with.
Right.
And it's like, why am I doing that? I love those moments where I catch myself doing it too, because as I'm now monitoring it, I'll see it pop up in the weirdest places. Like, why did I feel the need to apologize for that? And there's times where it's like self-deprecating to apologize for something that really isn't your responsibility to carry.
Yeah. Yeah, because you say it, but you still know it. And it feels disgusting inside, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Like, better. You know to stop saying yes to everything, but you can't. Right? That's a good part. That's a good sign. That's actually a good thing. Someone asked me the other day on Facebook, could grief be a teacher? Of course, all things can be teachers, right? And yes, I say yes, but it makes me feel gross. That's the sweet spot, man. That's where you're starting to see how it comes up, right?
Yeah.
And you can do a lot with that. In the next segment, we'll talk about that, but you're absolutely right. It's the overcommitting, the over apologizing. When people kind of with those traits do that to me, as you know, I'll say, hey, don't apologize for that, right?
Nope.
I don't smack you, but I do correct you because you shouldn't be apologizing for that, and I just want to make sure you know you shouldn't be apologizing for that, right?
Yeah.
But the
last round of that I went through where I was doing I need to start catching that again. Was when you pointed it out. I'm like, fuck, I'm doing it again.
Right,
Like, I'm
right.
back in that system.
And that's the thing about this, and we say this a lot. You don't heal this and it goes away forever, right?
Yeah.
We will fall back into it because we will fall into different little tiny comfort zones throughout our whole path. It's you're a human being. You get comfortable and you will fall into a lull. You'll fall into and then you'll say, but it's much easier for you to find it now. But how this shows up for the reactors, our little powder kegs, is you have to understand they're not squeezing everything for control because they feel threatened by uncertainty, really. They're saying, they're excusing it. They make excuses. I'm just being honest. You don't like it, too bad, bro, right? I'm just a direct person. I don't care if anybody likes it or not.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let people disrespect me. I've said some of these things. I've said some of these things. Heather catches me on them sometimes. And I'm like, ugh, damn it. Yeah, that's why that felt like crap to say that, right? Or do that or whatever. I know what needs to happen, or I'm just trying to fix it, or these things. But these patterns survive that way because we make them sound like reasonable explanations. They sound reasonable. They sound mature, right? They sound like this guy has his stuff together. But if he's exploding on everything, because like when the reactive person says no, that no is a bomb, though. It's not just, no, I'm not doing that. Or, you know, if you ask me to do something and I can't, I'll be like, you know what, I can't do that. I can't do that on that day. Let's find a different day, right? Or whatever. But the no hits hard when they say no, because you're never going to get them to agree to that. But they micromanage, they interrupt everybody. Your favorite kind of people, the ones that have to have the last word all the time, those are powder keggers, right? The passive person will say yes, but that yes really costs them, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, it comes back sort of what you were talking about, the disgusting feeling, because I think both sides feel it when they're activated and after they get through go through whatever activated them in the situation, and it's this pain against that authentic self that's underneath the surface. Mm-hmm. It's that knowing you're acting out of alignment with the values you want to have. I've been working with this psychological concept for a while now because I find it fascinating about the true self and the ideal self and the gap in between where your confidence lies and all this. But what if it's more than that? What if the gap is between who you are and how far you are from your values? Mm-hmm. Because many people, and I was guilty of this, I had this set of values that I told myself I would live by, but a lot of them were not things that I was at a place to meet. And so then any time that I acted out of that alignment, it would just create this inner turmoil, even if I wasn't able to name it.
Yeah. Others will perceive trepidation. Be mindful. Do you remember that axiom when I taught that to you?
Yeah, that one hit me hard too. Hey, you gave me that at a really bad time in my life, man. That one fucking followed me for so long. Because it's like I was messing up at work everywhere. I was sort of doing that shrinking thing. I was going through PTSD and all this other trauma. So, like, looking at it now, it's like it's understandable. But, man, I'm like, they know. They know I am being just like, they can feel it off. They can smell the insecurity on me. But, you know, people, we have to be mindful of this, and this axiom fits here because these different states are just fear becoming visible, and we have to be mindful of that, right? As we work through these things today. But really, when we're working through lots of things in life and through lots of things along this path, people will perceive things in us, and it does. The book doesn't always match the cover, though, right? It's not always what they see, and you know, sometimes it can look aggressive or timid or agreeable or stoicism, very stoic, right? Yeah. But this is why mindfulness is very necessary, because we are called to observe what is rising in us before it becomes action. These people might be seeing these things leaking out into our actions, and that's why we have to be mindful. We learn to notice these reactions in our body, our throat kind of getting tight, you know, when we get emotional, or our chest kind of getting tight and heating up, as you said in the hook, rising and rising up, right? Racing and
You know, we have to be mindful because we have to learn to notice our body's signals before the pattern takes over. And others will see it in us a lot of times before we see it in ourselves, right? So that's why it's important for us to be mindful. And that's why I chose this axiom for this. But this is where that line in our code, a line in one of our codes becomes really powerful. Emotion, yet peace. And this really becomes practical because our emotions are allowed to rise, right?
Yeah.
But peace governs this response.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, I heard this quote that has just followed me for a couple years now, and it's like, it's okay to feel anger. It's okay to understand what you went through wasn't fair. But what you do with your emotions after is your responsibility.
Everything's in our responsibility. That's why this path is hard. That's why it's hard. That's why healing is hard, because everything is our responsibility as it concerns us.
What would you say is the biggest thing that holds people back from recognizing, getting from that place of this is who I am to this is something I want to try to work on and change? What do you think helps people cross that threshold?
Well, like in all things we talk about, it is learning to, well, first, as I said, finding the pattern, or at least recognizing it. And this is why it's important to surround yourself with good people. For example, you would start apologizing for shit that has nothing even to do with you remotely. And I'm like, don't apologize for that, right? It could be something I did, and you're apologizing for me. That's weird, right? Don't do that.
Yeah.
Letting other people help us, but recognizing this stuff in us and building up enough trust, gathering enough evidence to trust ourselves when these patterns are, especially if we've done this for a long time and we are now identifying as these things, instead of letting these things be a shadow part of us, right? Something that happened to us at one point in our life that we now cling to. We have to learn to trust ourselves to know when it's time to act upon that. We have to trust ourselves enough to know, is this something I think is happening to me, or is it something that is happening to me? Going back to those asking better questions of ourselves, right? But in order to ask the question, because curiosity is the cure for most things, philosophically, metaphysically, spiritually,
psychologically, all of it.
You're right. So curiosity will help us find cures for this. Not that we're sick or broken, right, Michael? But but more questions. Curiosity helps us integrate insight into action, but it helps us point the stuff out. But we really have to start, in a lot of things we talk about on this show, we have to start to trust ourselves and trust others.
Well, and I think that's a beautiful point, too, because it's like one of the things I've learned is that it's really important who you keep around you. Because, you know, as a nice person, I used to surround myself with nice people. Would they call me on my crap? Hell no. Hell no. Yeah. And it's like, I need people who can help hold me accountable, that I trust enough that I know it's not them either attacking me or belittling me. It's them just being, hey, this is an observation. Like, one of the best parts of my marriage is my wife and I have open dialogue when we notice something about one another, and it's never perceived as an attack. It's something to chew on. It's something to really contemplate. Like, I didn't notice that.
Because she's good. She's not nice to you. She's good. Right? Yeah. It's better to be good than nice. I would rather never be nice to another person as long as I could be good. Because when you're nice to everybody, sometimes you have to compromise integrity and truth, and that's never okay. Never a good thing. But a good person will do their best to be as kind as they can be, but they're still going to bring that truth. And they're not going to, because they love you, because they want you to see you do the best you can. I'm never nice to you, Michael. I'm never nice to anyone. I'm never nice to my kids. I'm never nice to my wife. I'm never nice to anybody, any of my friends. But I am good, right? Yeah. And that's a very important distinction, especially for someone who wants to be of service, especially for someone who walks a path of light, a path of goodness. They must learn to stop being nice and be good. Be good instead.
And that is such a challenge unto itself. I see so many people struggling with this. I struggle with it, but it's true. Because there is truly a difference, and to do good is sometimes to cause pain.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to. You have to. But we have to start learning how to hold our power without collapsing or trying to control, right? How do we start to change this? How do we start to embody this?
You know, it's one of our favorite practices. It's the superpower that you can carry throughout all of this, and that is the pause. The pause is the number one way that you can go from being reactive to being responsive. Because when you get activated, you instantly want to go, like you said, it'll want to take over. But if you allow yourself to pause, to ask yourself, to question your own story you're starting to run with, and be able to get back into your body, you can approach things from a completely different place. It won't be easy. It's not like you can just shut it off, but you can at least stop agreeing with the stories your mind is telling you so that you can actually see things rationally.
Yeah. Axiom of light. One who walks the path of light does so with acceptance and contentment, free of conflict. This axiom begins to tell us that, hey, you're human, time to accept that. Not going to do this perfectly, but you have to do it without fighting yourself. You have to do this without fighting the natural flow of things, the natural way of the universe, right? Because this is about power that no longer has to fight or fold or control or defend itself. It is power that just is. The passive pattern is often, as we said, resistance to discomfort. They don't want to feel uncomfortable, so they'll just give in. That reactive pattern is often resistance to kind of like, I don't know what these people are up to, so I'm just going to come at them strong and bang into them, right? So that way I can always just have my way. Both of these are inner conflict. This axiom says, don't have conflict inside, right? And acceptance does not mean passivity, as we always talk about. It means to stop, it means like I'm going to stop arguing with literal reality long enough to choose my response wisely. I'm going to stop arguing with the universe, with the way things are. Contentment doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries, Michael. Right? It just means that your inner state is not completely dependent on whether everyone behaves in a way that you want them to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it comes back to the whole inner locus of control next to an outer locus of control. When we are operating from either of these places, we're trying to manage everything outside of us. Mm-hmm. We are trying to control dynamics, control perspectives, and control, right? But when we can operate from an internal locus of control, when we can have our power inside, where if someone does cross a boundary, we can speak our mind without it being an attack, or we can speak our mind instead of locking it away. When we can no longer try to manage everything outside of us, we gain our power back, because there's only one thing we actually have control of. That's why so many people have so much stress, is they're trying to manage things outside of them that they have no power over.
Yeah. We need to learn to walk with acceptance and contentment and not fight with ourselves. Because you can fight with yourself about things you can't control all you want to. It is not going to change a damn thing. It's just going to make you more exhausted and you more frustrated, right? And push you deeper into all these different patterns that are not good for you and that steal your power, actually.
Yeah. You know, it's like some practical things you can start bringing into your life. Is like, there's someone who's quiet. You know, speak one need. Just speak one need that has been uncomfortable for you to someone you care about that you've been meaning to do. You know, if you're someone who's on the other side, be willing to, if someone has an opinion or request for you that you don't like, learn to have that pause and maybe do something outside of that comfort zone of normally when you would just wall up and be combative.
Mm-hmm.
I think another big one is boundaries.
Those are all good things, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. The boundaries on both sides, you know. I always looked at it as when you're on the passive side of things, they're like the lines in a swimming pool, right? You can swim under them, you can push them inwards, like they're virtually just there for show. Like, please respect this line here.
Like grid lines on a map, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But then you have the other side, which is just so rigid boundaries where anything that crosses it automatically is war, and there's so many of them because they're trying so hard to protect their peace and not be triggered.
Right.
And it's learning to release control of those boundaries, to have effective, good boundaries without it being trying to manage everything that everyone is doing.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. You know, the other day I had the most horrible day with other people slowing me down, getting in my damn way, annoying me to death. And Heather sitting in the passenger seat of the car, and I'm just over it. I can't get any damn way without people getting in my damn way. And it was driving me crazy. And all I could say was, thank you for the lessons in patience. Thank you for reminding me that I got to be patient. That's all I could do. That's all I could say. Because I could just reach out and flip their car over. I was just over it, dude. Right?
Yeah.
And that's that aggressive part of me going, let's just flip their car over. Right?
Yeah.
Just flip it out of our way. But the aligned self, the greater self would say, thank you for this lessons in patience. Apparently I have more to learn. And they all existed to teach me that day. Right? So, yeah.
Well, and it's beautiful because I think this is one of the things we need to talk about more. And it's the perception around these type of events that trigger us. Like,
Yeah.
You hear me say it often, I love triggers. And it's not because I find them enjoyable. It's not because they're fun. But it's because if I use the perspective of this is a chance to learn and grow, I'm able to approach them with a little more, humility isn't the word, but resilience. I'll go with resilience.
Yeah. That's a good word. These examples are what happens when a person holds power without, wielding it, right?
Yeah.
This is how someone holds power without flipping the cars over, right? Because on the inside, what changes in people when you start to understand this concept of what true power is, it stops becoming something that our ego has to prove.
Yeah.
When a person can hold power without, like I said, wielding it, they're no longer trying to convince the entire room, convince, the family, the whoever, that they're strong. Your strength will show by your merits, by your works, by your deeds, not trying to convince things, not trying to dominate everything. So, yeah, it feels like steadiness. It feels like you said, resilience. That's what it feels like to have a center, to have a foundation you stand on, alignment in the middle.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the big things to really evaluate where you stand on these sides is ask yourself, when someone tells you a hard truth, when someone's honest with you about something you don't want to hear but you know is true, do you take it as a perceived attack, criticism, or judgment? Or are you like, you know what? You're right. That is something I should work on. Do you feel more inclined for these, like I was saying with Allison, she can give me feedback and I never feel this sense of being judged or attacked. It is this, I didn't notice that. Thank you. Let me think on this. And it doesn't mean I have to take it for truth. It doesn't mean I have to change anything. But I welcome it at a perspective that used to be something that I would feel was an attack.
Right.
Or a judgment on my character.
Right. And
would you say...
It's very easy to
Go
fall
ahead.
into those. I was just going to say, it's very easy to feel like things like we're being attacked. It's very easy to fall into those old patterns, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's why this
Because that's when the trigger
exists.
comes.
That's why this show exists, so that we can tell you how bad we screwed up to get to where we are. No, I'm just kidding.
And how we're still screwing up.
Sometimes it is like that, I know. What was you going to say?
I was going to say, what happens to someone when they have that shift? When they start practicing the pause, they start learning to stand in their power, and it may not be perfect, it may not be the way we would exactly want it to go, but when people start making that transition, what do you think really happens inside of them? What do you think happens to their lives?
Like I said, it feels like steadiness. If I could explain what steadiness is, like tons of trust, tons of confidence. Like you can't be easily pushed off center, off balance, right? You sit in stillness with confidence and power. You can say, no matter what's happening, I know where I stand, even if this conversation is uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. Even if there's no resolution.
Right. Because resolution isn't up to us. We do our part, and the other person does their part, or we do our part and the universe does the rest, right? We're not always there for a long time. Sometimes we're there to push people in a direction or to let people pick themselves up or to pick people up. That's where mastery comes in. That's when we know not only when to intervene and when not to, when to step away, but how long, how much do we give, do we do, right, for a particular situation. So that's what that really feels like, though. But it feels like a steadiness, like you know how to wield your power, that internal locus of control, as you were saying.
Yeah.
That's really when you know that you have everything is clicking and syncing for you. Is when you can manage the world from the inside, because literally that's what you do.
Well, and I think one thing just to add to that too is it's like you think being able to dominate a room is powerful. Just wait till you have this ability of discernment, this ability to be cool during a really tense situation. That feels like real power. That feels like embodied action. That's where you feel true strength.
Let me ask you, from the moment we started our student-teacher relationship to the moment that you felt like everything started falling into place, everything started to solidify under your feet, where you started to find balance, what did that feel like?
Again, this path ain't linear. It took a long time for me to get to that place where I really felt like each step had footing underneath it. Mm-hmm. But once I did, I felt so not just sure of my direction and the path I was walking, but I felt sure in who I was. I felt sure in what I wanted to do. I mean, an episode we have coming out soon is one on purpose. Part of that was stepping into my authentic self. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest thing, which really ties into the spiritual, is how much as I was willing to break the patterns that had run my life, every single time I leveled up, I gave a piece of that away, of my old self, the universe met me with abundance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I feel that is so true.
That's exactly what it feels like. When you learn to trust yourself and others, when you learn to trust in the truth, and you don't have anxiety, or at least a lot of anxiety about the future, and you have a lot less stress about the past, and you have that sure footing and your confidence, not false confidence, good, strong, natural confidence, that's how you know. That's what it feels like.
Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up the episode?
Yeah, both of these are trying to feel safe, right? And that's why this conversation matters, because the goal is not for the passive person to become aggressive. You and I had conversations throughout the years about, you would say, man, I'm so passive, I need to be more aggressive like you. And I would always say, you do not need to become more aggressive. It's not for the reactive person to become less energetic, we'll say. They have a lot of energy, those guys. And it's certainly not for them to become silent. The goal is for both to come back into self-possession. Real power is not volume. It's not control. It's not being the easiest person in the room or being the loudest person in the room. Real power is the ability to stay connected to yourself when everything else rises and falls around you. It's the ability to speak a need without apologizing for having one. It's the ability to set a boundary without turning that boundary into a weapon, as you alluded to earlier. If you cross this, it's war, which is not good. So this is where the work begins. And so as you move forward from this episode, pay attention to your patterns. Notice the yes that costs you. Notice the no that explodes like a hand grenade. Notice where your throat closes, your chest tightens. Notice where the resentment starts collecting, and not just collecting, but collecting with interest.
Yeah.
Notice where control begins to feel like safety, where it's not. And then choose one practice, choose one thing, pause, and then try to respond. For us at Ashla, this is the path back to right order within ourselves, right? Back into right relationship with our lower and higher selves. So you don't have to collapse and you don't have to control. There is a middle ground here. There is a place to be aligned. That is where real power is. So yeah, that's what I'd leave you with today.
Beautiful. I remember one of the epiphanies I had as I was doing the work during this time where we had that conversation is I realized that our goal isn't to become the opposite of what we are. It is to embody what strengths we were given. You know, one of the beauties of someone who is passive is they have strong empathy. It doesn't mean remove empathy and become someone bitter, which is what happens to people who don't end up walking the path. But it's being able to transmute that into authority. Same with someone who's a powder keg. They have great leadership skills, but they must learn to trust others. They must learn to surrender that power so that they have true power in leadership. For our exercise today, I figured we would do something simple, which is something we've talked about earlier, and it's just the pivot. It's the pause. It's the ability to, when we get triggered, when something comes up, if you're someone who's passive, you know, it's that moment where you know you need to speak a need or speak your truth and you don't. Allow yourself to pause when this comes up. Just try it once this week. When you feel that resistance, when you feel that need to please, or you feel that need to blow up, allow yourself to just calm down, bring yourself back to your body, and then try to approach things where you do speak that need, or you learn to have a conversation instead of an explosion. For affirmations today, my needs are allowed to take up space. I can hear hard things without being harmed by them. I release what was never mine to control. My power does not depend on anyone else's behavior, and I am steady even when things don't go my way. And for our journaling prompts, when did you first learn that staying quiet or staying in control kept you safe? What was happening around you back then? What is it that helped manifest this mechanism? Describe the last time you felt genuinely powerful without anyone else losing. What made that moment different? And if you stopped managing how people experience you, what would you say tomorrow that you're not saying today? Thank you so much for joining us today. Check out the episode companion below for strategies and reflections you can carry out throughout the week on this topic if this resonated with you. Share it with someone you think needs to hear it, because this is an important message for all of us. It's one of the first lessons I had to go through when I started this journey. Check us out on all the socials, Spotify, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We're all over the place. And the best website ever, newashel.com. Thank you so much for being a part of our family and joining us through this whole conversation. With love and gratitude, ad lucem.
Ad lucem.